Hello, I am William Jamal Wright,
And I'm Hattie.
and this is our podcast, HattieJo. What are we doing? It's been a while.
It has been a while.
We have been it's been a very busy couple of months.
Yeah, we did one in November, and then December was very busy.
Yeah. And,
What made it so busy?
Well, it was just a lot of things that made it so busy, and I think it's kind of been we did a couple for November. It hasn't been our normal routine of monthly podcasts.
Yeah.
But we're back in
We're back.
2022. Yeah.
Well,
So
part of December, we were both busy with work, but we also went on our honeymoon. That's one of
Yes.
the reasons why it's been a while.
yeah, we went to Cancun.
We did.
Yeah, the beloved. It's a nice little couples resort.
Yes.
Yes, and we had a great time. We were there for about a week.
Yeah.
Yeah, a little under a week.
A little under a week,
Yeah.
but it was so nice.
Yes, they took very good care of us there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Even though we were both ready to come home at the end.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't say it was just you kind of get in the routine all year of kind of working and kind of getting mental stimulation, and then you go on vacation. It's just yeah, you're just gonna relax, and there's no mental stimulation. You're just watching TV, drink some drinks, and hang out by the pool, and
Yeah.
maybe read a couple of books. But there's not really much mental stimulation going on.
Yeah, and we kind of planned that on purpose. We had one day where we went out and did things, but the rest of the time it was literally stay at the hotel, hang out in the swim up bar, lay on a lounger by the beach.
Yeah, and we actually went to is it called the Cenotes?
Yes, cenotes.
Yeah. And that was a lot of fun. It was basically just an open, water. It's like a natural water park.
Yeah.
That's the way they would put it.
Yeah, the cenotes are caverns, and they're filled with water. So they had all sorts of things, you could do zip lining, you could do cliff jumping. We did a lot of kayaking, swimming.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Snorkeling.
It's a good thing I had my life vest there. And they told us whenever you were getting a life vest, make sure you shake it so there's not any ants in it. And from that point on, I was oh, there's a possibility that ants might be in my life vest. I was shaking that thing like crazy.
I was let's just get in the water as soon as possible, and then all the ants will be flushed out. But yeah, no, so that was really fun, and we kind of had designed it on purpose to be really low-key relaxing because we had such a busy fall, and with everything going on. So it was really nice, the first couple days to just be oh, I have nothing pressing to do. I can just relax. Read a bunch of books, but I agree with you. After day 4, it was all right, I'm ready to get back in action.
Yeah, and so then we left there and we did our annual New Year's in Florida, which actually may not be in Florida next year, but we shall see.
Yeah.
But yeah, we went and hung out with the best man at our wedding, Patrick and Claudia, hung out with them for New Year's and had a very good time in Florida.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then
surprisingly, COVID was not caught by us.
Yeah. Or it could have been caught and we just are asymptomatic. But
yes.
I will say that every time I have been even the hint of sick, I have tested, and every time I've tested negative. So
yeah. So we're either we've had it and we're completely asymptomatic, so we had no reason to get tested to know.
Yeah.
Or we somehow haven't had
yeah.
it yet. But I feel now things are and I still think there should be more people who are vaccinated, but that's not the point of this discussion. The point is there is a pretty substantial portion of the population that's vaccinated now and also has their booster. And I think there's a lot of fatigue that people are going through in terms of the safety protocols. So I think there's starting to be a lot more cases than before, because before people were really serious about working from home or social distancing, wearing masks, and now people are whatever, don't even care. So more people are starting to contract the virus, but it's not nearly as big of a problem because a lot of people are vaccinated, right? So I'm starting to hear a lot more of, you know, in the first part of the pandemic, it wasn't like, oh, nobody I know got COVID. There was a few people, but it wasn't like tons and tons. Whereas I feel like now, just coming out of the woodwork, like everybody I know is like, oh yeah, I've had COVID, or oh, I currently, and so it appears to me to feel like there's just a lot more of it going around. So that's why I'm like, yeah, we're probably gonna get it at some point.
Yeah, and I think like just the new like variant is a lot more contagious.
Yeah.
And like it seems like every new variant is more contagious than like the previous iteration.
Which was the first one was already extremely contagious.
Yeah.
So.
And so I think that's like a huge part of it,
Definitely.
more than anything else. Like that each new variant is becoming more contagious.
Oh yeah, I think it's the contagious, but also, the first couple weeks of the pandemic, we literally were in our house and didn't see a single other person, whereas the past 2 weeks, business as usual. So I feel like it's both things. But anyhow, so that's been we had an exciting honeymoon. We were able to do a little bit of traveling, stayed safe and healthy.
Yeah.
So
and now we're back here in Arizona.
That's right. Back to the grind.
Yeah. So it was, our topic today is kind of first talking a little bit about like what we've been up to, what we are doing, and we are going to like talk a little bit over the holiday break. For those of you that are not sports fans, there was a significant number of like really important players to their teams in college sports that chose
One might call them playmakers.
Yeah. That decided to sit out of like bowl games. And so you see like there's specifically on ESPN College Game Day, there was Kurt Herbstreit that basically said that like players of his generation, like they would never think to like sit out of a bowl game. They would always and basically what he was getting at is that the players of his generation they loved football more than like the players of this generation. And I definitely consider.
So you took that to be his message?
Yes.
Okay. So he was trying to be like, players in my day like loved football more than players today.
Yes. Okay. I think that was 100% his message.
Okay.
And he was kind of basically signaling that like because players choose to like sit out of bowl games and like which don't have anything to do with like rankings. It's not like the playoffs. Like the playoffs, they're actually still competing for like a championship. But like he made the point that these players that are sitting out of bowl games, they don't care about football as much. And basically like we love football more than they love football now. And I have a huge issue with it. And just the whole like thought process of like players choosing to do what is best for them.
Well, I think it goes along to the same kind of BS-ness of like, oh, such and such won this game because they wanted it more, or like,
yeah.
It's like, come on, give me a break. Like, sure, when I'm playing Risk against my brothers, they're gonna win because they want it more because I could care less and don't put any effort in. But that's very different than these upper echelons of like extremely competitive people.
Yes.
They're not just, if they wanted to play football for the sake of playing football and not care about winning, they'd get a group together in the courtyard, right?
Yeah.
And they'd throw the ball around. But they're here putting in countless hours, whether it's in the weight room, on the practice field, in the video, like watching video, like doing all this stuff, eating certain things that they don't want to do, like maybe going out less than they would otherwise, like all sorts of things impacting their every single action they do in a day.
When you're a college athlete, everything you do is dictated by like the sport that you play.
Yes, and it even impacts like the classes and everything. So like, yes. I would say taking classes and doing homework is impacted by your sport, but it's probably the only thing in your day that you do that isn't directly benefiting your sport.
Well, and
everything else.
there's coaches in contracts now that like the performance that the players have in the classroom gets bonuses. Like they get bonuses based off like, does the team have a GPA?
Oh my god! So I take that right out, because then if the coach is getting bonuses, maybe there's like some type of trickle down of new equipment for the weight room. Or I don't know. But
well,
like,
there's like
if it just goes to the coach, I think that's kind of annoying.
But like that means that like the coach is
Actively invested.
actively invested in making sure that like the players are doing everything possible to get as good grades as possible. That may be taking a less strenuous like major. Like, hey, this kid maybe wants to major in math, but like that's a really hard major, and maybe we should go with exercise science because those classes are going to be a little bit less strenuous than mathematics.
Mm-hmm.
And so you like that is, in my opinion, a direct like the coach, like your sport and the sport that you play has a direct impact.
Oh, I definitely think that the sport has an impact on your school, but what I was trying to say is in a day, in 24 hours, almost every action a student athlete makes is in order to benefit their sport, right? I wake up at a certain time so that I can go to weights. I eat a certain thing so that I can have optimal performance. I take a nap or I sit in the training room so that I can get treatment, so that I can have better performance. I go watch videos so that I can have better performance. And like the only thing that they do that isn't so that I can have better athletic performance is I'm sitting in class, because it's like I'm sitting in class so that I can learn.
No, I go to class so that I can play football.
Well, that's so that's I wouldn't be here otherwise. Like I'm here to play football.
Well, not even
I can't
like
play football
like
unless
no,
I
you
go to
can't.
class.
Yeah, no one can play football. Like you can't play a college sport unless you go to class.
Athlete,
like if you're a college athlete, like going to class is part of like.
All right, so I stand corrected.
You go to class
so that I can play football. Anyhow, so I guess we got kind of in the weeds, but the purpose of that is literally, as we've discussed, literally their whole day is behaviors are made, decisions are made in order to benefit their athletic performance.
Mm.
That is not the actions someone takes who like doesn't care that much or doesn't want it that bad. That is a lot. You have to want it a lot to put up with all that crap. Like, you really have to want it. So
yeah, there are a lot of sacrifices that you make in order to be a college athlete.
Yes.
And you kind of like throughout the season, like first of all, you have to play 3 seasons before you can declare for the NFL draft. And so you have to go, like you have to be 3 years removed from high school, period. And so
at a minimum.
And so you go through like all of these 3 years, you play football because you enjoy football. Like I don't think anybody, like you play football for like you could probably break it down to like 1 of 2 or 3 reasons. Like you play football because you really enjoy it. Like you play football because like you're really good at it.
And these aren't necessarily mutually exclusive. Yeah. Like you could be really good and really like it.
Or you could just be really good and not like it. But like this is really good. Like it gives me an opportunity. It gives me other opportunities.
Right.
Because I'm good at this. So it gives you like playing football gives you more opportunities at life. Like so like you see these different categories of like why people play football. And so there's like this kind of crossover here where like I really enjoy football, but like the benefits, I played 3 years. I now have an opportunity to go and like provide for my family, provide generationally for like my family, and doing the sport that I'm really good at and like I enjoy. And so they make this, or in my opinion, they make this decision to not play in the bowl games because the opportunities in the future outweigh like this opportunity for like this one game, right? Nobody's really like taking a whole year off from football because they enjoy football. Like if they didn't enjoy football, like they wouldn't be sacrificing all these things in order to play.
Right.
And so they get to the end of the season, and like they've fought with their brothers all year long, but like now this team does not have anything else that they're, in my opinion, there's nothing else that they're really fighting for. Like you're just playing another game that has no bearings on like the season. Like all of the like all conference players have been named, all Americans have been named. Like you're just playing this game
for a bowl title.
Yeah. Well, in the bowl title, what does that really mean?
That's what I'm saying.
Like,
it has
does no bearings.
Literally, there's no other thing other than it's a title.
There's not a championship or anything. And
right.
you see this with these players, like the opportunity cost of me getting hurt. And yes, I have insurance. Like they've.
Yeah,
like,
but at some level, no amount of money can like bring back.
Yes,
certain,
like those opportunity costs that
like,
you have.
If you get a serious TBI, like I'm sorry, you can't pay me. No amount of money is going to compensate me for like I can't use my brain to the optimum anymore. You know, like that's just my personal perspective. But
that would be the argument for not playing football at all.
Well, yeah, but that's a good point. That's right. It's like it doesn't. Anyway, I see what you're saying. Agreed.
Like,
but this is my personal perspective, and guess who's never played football at all? Anyway,
and so like I would make the argument that like the majority of these players, they may suffer like a torn ACL, or like there's a player at Alabama who was one of the best wide receivers in the country. He was a junior, so this is his. He's going to declare he has declared for the draft, but as his team is playing for like the national championship, he tears his ACL, and like he was doing it in trying to win a championship. So like I completely understand like him sitting out was not like in the plans or in an option because his team was still competing for a championship. And so, but he is now like, there was no doubt he was going to be one of the like top receivers and he was going to be drafted. Like, but now because he got injured in a game that was actually meaningful, like he is not going to get drafted. And so that has financial ramifications for like him and his family, like moving forward.
And so it's like, why would I go through that risk for a game that's not even meaningful?
Yeah. Like it's not the national championship. It's just a glorified scrimmage.
Yes. Yes.
It may be sentimental to like all the people that like I grew up watching the Rose Bowl and like the Rose Bowl means so much to me, but like it's honestly just the glorified scrimmage like that they keep score for. Like there's no like championships, like there's nothing on the line here in a lot of the bowl games. And so like you see these situations where the kids I'm sure they're getting some like advice that like is the opportunity cost really worth it here? Like the lower, like getting drafted in a lower round, like that's million, like the difference between like a first round draft pick and like even like a top 10 first round draft pick and the rest of the first round, it's literally like tens of millions of dollars. And like that makes a huge freaking difference. Like it makes a big difference. And then you tack on like as each round goes by, like there's less and less likelihood that you're going to actually make the team. And so like there are huge financial ramifications, and we as a society are based off like money. Like we're a capitalistic society. Like everything we do is like, or the majority of things we do, like there's some type of like financial ramifications or some type of financial value for that. And it like irks me that people don't understand that like, oh, somebody else is making a financial, like we have this society that's based off like financial value. Somebody is making a decision to optimize their financial value, and then we like criticize these we criticize these people for doing that.
Yeah.
And it's like, our whole system is built on this.
Right. Why? How can you be surprised?
Yeah.
When they're acting this way, because this is.
Or how can you even critique it? I don't understand how you can critique it.
Here's
when
why
our
you can
whole,
critique. Or here's
when
why.
our whole
Culture.
culture is based off optimizing our financial opportunities.
Mm-hmm. Here's where I think they're coming from, because we all know I watch football casually.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not like following all these things, right? So I didn't know about this until you brought it up. I mean, I know that players sit out the draft. I didn't know this guy made this sit out bowl games for the draft. I didn't know this guy made this comment. I have several things to say of my own, but the most pressing one is this really reminds me a lot of the Simone Biles thing, right? A difference is Simone Biles chose to sit out the Olympics, right? The Olympic team final. And so one could argue it's very different because that actually does have meaning, whereas a bowl game is a glorified scrimmage, doesn't have meaning. It'd be like the athletes sitting out the national championship game. In terms of like, I'm choosing, because it's the opportunity cost of me competing is too great, like the risk doesn't justify the potential reward, so I'm gonna sit this out.
Yes.
And she caught so much flack for that. When
Really?
It's like, oh, extreme. Like there's a big part of the community that was like, I praise her for doing the thing that's right for her mental health and her physical health. Gymnastics is really freaking dangerous. If you're not in a place where you can you're not confident you can do your skills, you can literally die. And that's a normal, regular person doing gymnastics, not Simone Biles, who does 10 times harder gymnastics than any other person in the entire world, right? Like, this isn't just like, these athletes already compete with broken bones all the time, kidney stone, like all this stuff. This isn't, like, this is a serious health concern. I'll just leave it at that. So, but she caught a lot of flack of, oh, she's a bad teammate. Oh, like, she doesn't care that much. Oh, like, I can't believe she's, being so selfish and sitting out.
Mm-hmm.
And so, to me, both of these are very similar. Like, oh, this person is sitting out, they don't want to play football that much, or they don't want it bad enough, or like catching a lot of flack.
Mm-hmm.
When it's like, no, you want them to play because you have a vested interest. Either it gives you entertainment or it gains you money. But it doesn't gain Simone Biles money if she gets hurt and can't do anything in the future anymore.
Yeah.
It doesn't gain this athlete money if they get hurt and can't go to the draft. So people get mad. Like, it's just the culture of making money off the backs of athletes, right? I want you to play in this bowl game because it increases the notoriety of the school, and I'm a donor, and like, whatever. I want you to win more titles, meaningless as they are, for the school, so it like looks better. So when you choose not to go on that route, you're not making me money, or you're not making the institution that I support money as you should, which is the implicit contract we have going here. So I'm going to be mad about it. I'm going to be mad that instead of you putting my money and my needs first, you're putting your money and your needs first. And it's the same with Simone. She was supposed to be this huge cash cow for USA Gymnastics because she's going to win all the things because she is that good. And of course they just put way too much pressure on her. So of course, like, when you're supposed to be the face of the organization that abused you and they're like putting all their money on you, of course you're going to lose it mentally, and then that's going to be dangerous, and you're going to decide to do something that's good for you that happens to be bad for them, and they're going to be pissed off about it.
So
right?
USAG was pissed off about it?
I mean, their official statement was supportive, but they were pissed off about it. And tons of people in the sporting world was like, you know how you're talking about this one football player guy from a previous generation is like saying this stuff?
Mm-hmm.
There were hundreds of people like that from all sorts of sports. I'm like, I'm surprised you even know who Simone Biles is. She's been winning tons of medals, tons of world championships, tons of Olympics for like decades now. And now, this one time, you have something to say. Like, anyway, we're getting in the weeds. But
no,
I stand by this comment of like, people get angry about it when the athlete chooses to put the athlete's best interest first. Because the implicit assumption the entire time is the athlete is going to choose to put the institution's best interest first. And so when that
And the team becomes like a proxy for like the institution. Yeah.
Because the team is making the institution money.
Yeah.
And so that's when people get all up in arms, and that's when I'm like, F you. Like, this is, I mean, and I guess the point with the Simone Biles thing that I keep going back to is money, but like, her life was on the line. Plenty of gymnasts make a tiny error and break their necks and are either dead right there or quadriplegic. That's regular gymnasts, right? Like, so I guess what I'm trying to say is, in my opinion, like, life being on the line is a higher, more severe thing than hundreds of millions of dollars being on the line.
Yeah.
But that's just my personal value system. I can understand different people may see things differently. So my main frustration with this is like that concept of like, they're putting themselves and their best interests first and you're upset about it. Like, I find that extremely unreasonable.
Yes. Because
any person in general does what they think is best and like puts their own interests first.
Yeah.
So how can you fault someone else for doing the exact same thing?
Yeah, and I feel like, just to kind of add on your point, and I completely agree with you. Like, our whole society, like, we try to preach, and especially in sports, we try to preach like these, like, team oriented, like, we're all doing this for the team, and we're all doing this like for each other, and like everybody put like our best foot forward for the interest of the team. But like, our whole society is like individual, like it's all about like what is best for me. Like, you can take, there's so many examples in today's world where it's like, during this whole pandemic,
what's best for the team, humanity? Get your vaccine, wear your mask. Who's all up in arms about getting vaccines, wearing masks? Most people, right? Like, it's like,
yeah, like, it's like the idea of a team and it's all doing things for like each other. It, like, our society does not support that.
Right.
And it's example after example. But yet, in these sports, like Olympic sports or like
any sport.
Yeah, any sport. We like to promote these ideas, and we get upset with people when they choose to do like the thing that our society is based upon, which is do what is best for you.
Right.
Like,
how can you fault them when you hear out of 100 messages, 99 are do what's best for you, and one is do what's best for the team?
Yeah.
How can you be upset when they do what's best for them? But also, I would like to point out that I also feel like the comment about, oh, them sitting out means they don't like football enough or they don't want it bad enough. I also want to call shenanigans on that, because I feel like, and plenty of gymnasts do this too, like, I'm going to sit out the national championships because I'm somewhat injured so that I can have my best possible performance at Olympic trials, so I can try to go to the Olympics.
Yeah.
Because Olympics, independent of money, we're taking all the money out of the situation, even though going to the Olympics does have financial ramifications as well. But like, let's just talk only about the clout. I'm an Olympic gymnast versus like, I'm not an Olympic gymnast.
Yeah, I'm a national champion.
All it is about the competitiveness and like desire for to be the best and to compete with the best, right? People do this all the time and nobody cares. It's like, oh, that makes sense. You want to save yourself to try to be at the Olympics. You want to compete with the best of the best, not just the best in the USA or the best in your country. Like, save yourself so that you can do the love of the sport at the highest possible level. Yeah. Same thing here. I already competed in the national championship amongst these chumps. I really want to play against the best of the best, which is in the NFL. Like, so I am trying to save myself so I can, you know, do my sport for as long as possible, because I love it so much. You know, So I'm also just like, this comment makes no sense.
Yes.
Like, and third of all, the other thing, this guy, like, I really wish I had known about this a little more so I could have done some research, because I've done no research. But I would love to see the numbers on, okay, when you were a student athlete last generation, how many student athletes were there? How many went to the NFL? How many NFL spots were available, right? Like, I have to feel like there's a much different, and also how much time and effort did it cost you being a student athlete 20, 25, 30 years ago than it does now? At least for that last one, I can guarantee it was a much less involved time commitment, right? So it's also like, how can you, who did version light, be critiquing someone doing version extreme that they might have slightly different priorities? Like, it's not an apples to apples comparison, and I'm not trying to diminish anyone's accomplishments being a student athlete of a prior generation. And there's all sorts of things that go into why it may have been different. But I would really like to see the numbers to see, like, did people in the previous generations stood out as well? And it just, there's no social media, so people aren't as aware. Right?
Well, I will
like,
say that,
how
like,
did the draft work back then? And
so I will say that, like, in previous generations, there wasn't like a playoffs or national championships. And
so way less opportunity to be injured.
Well,
already.
So, like, they still had bowl games.
Yeah, but so how many games in the season did a top athlete who's going into the draft play?
They played probably around like 12 games. For the entire
and now,
season.
If you're one of the top four that goes to the national championship,
in order to win the national championship, you got to win 16 games, basically.
Now.
Yeah.
And then what was it?
And then, in order to win the national championship, you probably have to win 12 games. 12, maybe 13, but it's most likely 12.
Neither the 12 nor the 12, 13, nor the 16, neither of those includes a bowl game, right?
No, the 12 or 13, like, they include the bowl game.
Okay, so let's make ours 17, right?
No, so now it's 16. You have
16, but if we're including the bowl game, that'd be 17.
No, like, the bowl game is 6. Like, in order to win the national championship, you would play 16 games.
But the bowl game is after the national championship, right?
No. So all the bowl games are played.
Oh yeah, they're only after. I'm thinking it's after the season's over, but
yeah,
it's after everybody else's season's over except for the 4 teams going to the national championship. Okay, got it.
Well, the 4, like, so basically, where everyone plays the season.
Well I know football.
Everyone plays the season.
Yes.
Right. They play. I think now it is 12 games, and so most likely, if you're going to the college football playoffs, you have to play in your conference championship game. So that's
an additional
13.
Game. Yep.
Yeah, that's so you play 12. You play 12 regular season games. If you go to the conference championship, you play 13, and then you go to the playoffs. So the first playoff games is on New Year's Eve.
That's 14.
That's 14. And so it's 15.
Okay, 15.
And
but that doesn't include the bowl game.
What do you think?
Is the conference championships the bowl game?
No.
So I'm trying to compare, like, the total athletic demand on your body from a generation ago playing college football to current day.
So in terms of number of games.
In terms of number of games. And it sounds like in the previous generation, correct me
you
if I'm
play
wrong.
12 games.
There's 12
including
games,
the bowl.
11
11 the regular season, and then the bowl.
Okay,
game.
so previous generation, 11 regular season games, 1 bowl game, no national championship games.
No, that's correct.
Is there any conference championships games?
Those didn't start until like the mid 90s.
Okay, so no conference championships games and no national championships games.
Yeah.
So that brings us 11 plus 1 plus 0 plus 0 is 12.
Yeah.
So current day, you have how many regular season? 12?
Yes.
So that's already 1 more regular season game.
Yes.
You have a conference championship game where you didn't before.
Yeah.
You have a national championship game where you didn't before.
Yeah.
And then you also have that bowl game because we counted a bowl game for the other, if you so choose to participate in the bowl game.
So
Or it's like if you're in a national championship team, you don't play in a bowl game.
If you're in the national championship playoffs, you don't play in the bowl game. That is the bowl game.
All right. So then, that makes sense. So that's why you're not including it.
Yeah.
So what do we have? 12 plus 2. That's 14.
So we have 12
regular season conference championship. Oh, and then national championship is 2 games.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
In order to get to the national championship, you have to play 15 games.
So 12 versus 15 is our totals, right? Okay. Glad we got that. Yes, and so the bowl games are like consolations for people that didn't make the national championships.
Yes.
Also, bowl games, it's like, what's the criteria? You have to win 6 games and lose 6?
Or
That's
you
not a
just
good
have to win
criteria.
if you win like 6 games, you're eligible to go to a bowl.
Like, that's like
half your
half of the, yes, and so like you would expect half the teams to be able to make that happen.
Yeah, but
So I'm just saying, like, going to a bowl game is not that big a deal when like every other team gets to go.
very
Glorified
true.
scrimmage. Anyway,
Very true.
So already there's three games extra
For those
top athletes
yeah.
that are going into the draft.
And if your team is going to the playoffs, like you're not the same. Basically, it's like the same 4 or 5 teams that are every year reaching like the playoffs.
So it's like you've had the 3 extra your freshman year and your sophomore year and your junior year.
Yeah, and then that includes all the practices that like you gotta do.
You also
like,
continue. And tons of research shows that athletes sustain much greater rates of injury during actual competition than they do during practice. And there's obvious reasons for that in terms of like, oh, well, we don't like hit the quarterback in practice, right? Or so there's things that people do consciously to decrease the risk of injury during practice, right? And similar in gymnastics, we're going to dismount into the pit as opposed to dismounting onto a hard surface. But there are also subconscious factors that, you know, you take out those things we do consciously, there's additional things above and beyond that that make your risk of injury in actual competition greater than in practice. So it's not just the load that they've gone under, but it's increased risk than just like, oh, that extra 3 weeks of practices or, you know, what have you. So I guess what I'm trying to say is it's kind of not fair for someone in a prior generation to critique this current generation because the prior generation had the benefit of fewer opportunities for risk.
Yes. And I thought also like the prior generation, like there was no like championship game. So like everyone still played. When you went to bowl games, you still had a chance to say, hey, I'm the national champion of this year. Like if you're number 4, like you're not necessarily playing against number 1, right? So like when they go to the playoffs now, 1 versus 4, 2 versus 3, and you play the games. Well, back a generation before, it would be like Ohio State is playing Oregon. Like Oregon has no chance of winning the national championship, but Ohio State is like the number 2
but
team.
I thought there wasn't a national championship in the prior generation.
There wasn't. So like Ohio State is playing Oregon, right?
In a bowl game.
In a bowl game, Rose Bowl. Alabama.
I love how you're like specifying which bowl game.
Alabama is playing.
So
Texas.
Was there a concept of a national champion?
Yes.
Oh, okay, and so it was just based on your performance in these games, like the game.
It was just
your performance
everybody.
in the bowl game.
Everybody
influenced your.
Yeah, everybody like your performance could like if Alabama, Texas, or Oklahoma, or Alabama, Texas, Ohio State, and Clemson are all undefeated going into the bowl games in a previous generation.
Got it.
If 3 of those lost, the one could say, "Oh, I'm the national champion."
Right.
Or if like so 4 teams could legitimately say, I'm the national champion. Yeah. Like this bowl game will determine if I'm the national champion.
Gotcha.
And like people will get to vote and they can say, hey, like this team, I thought this team was the best team. And so it wasn't necessarily settled on the field. Like,
but it could have been if they had lost.
Yeah. And so like your performance in those bowl games in the previous generations still could have an outcome
towards the national
championship. Could still count towards, like we're gonna call ourselves the national champs. We went undefeated this year. Nobody beat us. Like we can call ourselves the national champs this year, which happened because teams will be like, like these 2 years, or this year we had 2 teams that were undefeated, and we're both gonna say we were the national champs. And like so that like in the previous generations, even when you got to bowl games, everyone could still say with like.
So it sounds like
I'm the national champion.
The importance of the bowl game has changed.
Yes.
And maybe it would be a more fair. I mean, there's still the concept of the increased risk in their additional games compared this generation to last generation. But it sounds like it'd be more fair if that guy had critiqued an athlete for sitting out, the national championship game as opposed to the bowl game.
But nobody's sitting out a national
Well, that's
championship.
what I'm saying. So, like, his comparison is flawed.
Yeah.
Because the bowl game of his day was important for determining national champion.
Yeah.
The bowl game in our day is meaningless, doesn't determine national champion.
Yeah.
So you can't really compare the two.
But he did.
So he's a dum-dum. Like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, I think we've dissected his argument from all the different ways. Like,
yeah. But I would say my biggest takeaway is just that, like, we shouldn't be critiquing people for, like, doing things, taking the most financially, like, opportunistic view. I find issue with critiquing people that make financial decisions when we have based our society off financial decisions.
Or for deciding, you know what, my health is more important than this team thing. I think it's ridiculous that we critique people for that too.
Yeah, but I don't think people are at least
in football.
In football, I don't think people like critique. I don't find people critiquing people for like making health decisions. They critique people for making financial decisions. So that may be a difference from gymnastics to football.
Yeah, because there's no professional gymnastics.
Yeah.
But anyhow, when you first told me this, I'm like, this really sounds a lot like, oh, kids these days are doing like, nah. And I'm like, as annoying as it is, every generation is the kids these days, and it's like, I hate when old people say that, and then somehow every generation also turns around and is like, kids these days. So I'm just like, I think we have to write this one off as like, human is as human does.
All right. Well, thank you very much for joining us. We're trying to get back in the groove here in 2022. Yeah.
That's what we're doing.
Deuces.